Say, what's cracking, YouTube? It's your boy 16 to life, and I'm back like I'm on a parole violation. Yard down! Now, for those of y'all that's new to my page, in 1994, I got arrested. I was eventually sentenced to 16 years plus life, and I served 24 years straight in the California prison system. During those times, I accumulated some good stories. I'm going to share them with y'all today. If you like the story, be sure to hit that like button, leave a comment, subscribe. Most importantly, hit that notification bell. Also, I know a lot of times people that ask me, hey, chill, man, do a story about this, or maybe interview this guy, or will you interview that guy, or talk about this. I promise y'all, if you go to my YouTube playlist and you scroll through some of my older stories that I have them organized into different categories and topics, you will probably find something that you like, man. If you want me to interview somebody, you might already I may have already interviewed him. Just go through my old YouTube content, go to my YouTube playlist, scroll through there. I'm telling you, man, you'll definitely find you something that you like. Now let's hop right up into this story right here. Now, actually today, this is going to be more like a video, right? Because of course we know in the California prison system, you can get a life sentence. But there's also another type of life that people like to talk about, sometimes clown about, and that's known as life on the installment plan. And so basically what that is that those are for those dudes who may do 3 years here. They get out, they stay out 6 months, they come back with another 2 years. They get out, they stay out 2 months, they come back with another 5 years. So on and so forth, right? So you are almost doing a life sentence as well. The only thing about some of those guys is they're going home periodically for 3 or 4 months, 5, 6 months, never quite getting off parole and never quite making it, and coming back with another case, right? And one of those reasons for things like that happening, especially back in the day, is once you got out of prison, the parole office and the people who controlled the parole office and stuff like that, your parole officer, it was mandatory that you parole back to the same county that you had caught your commitment offense in, or the same county where you had committed the crime. So, especially back in those days, man, when I first came to prison, of course, if you came to jail with a criminal record, it was much harder to find employment. Now they have done some things to make it a little easier, but back then, it was much harder, right? And so, of course, some dudes would get out with the intention of doing good, but upon realizing that it was hard to get a job, or get a job that was paying well due to their criminal background, they would fall right back into the same things that had led them to prison in the first place. Now, of course, when you send a dude to prison and then you ask him to return back to the same neighborhood, many times, eventually, no matter how hard he may try, he will eventually find himself among the same type of friends, around the same environment that took him to prison. And now, once again, he's hanging with that crowd. He's doing what he used to do, and he's right back in prison. Now, they allow people from California to parole. Like, say, if you happen to be from Los Angeles or the Inland Empire, you can parole to San Diego. You can parole to Oakland. You can, parole to Sacramento, get you a fresh start. And that's very important, with helping some of these dudes stay out and not get caught up in what's known as recidivism, right? But I've seen plenty of dudes who come to prison and get out, and they wind up right back, and coming back to prison for whatever reason, it doesn't, or excuse me, going to prison that first time or that second time in a lot of cases does not deter that person from returning to the same environment. And a lot of times, a lot of those dudes was extremely young as well, and this is just my opinion. It seems like it's easier to do time when you're younger, for whatever reason. We tend to have less worries, we tend to have less concerns, and a lot of times we tend to have less responsibilities. But once a person starts to get older, for whatever reason, it just seems like that time starts to become harder and harder for him to do. I have a cousin, right? And when I first got to Ironwood in 1998, he was on D yard. Initially, I believe I was on C yard, and I found out that he was down there as well. I got word to him. By the time he responded, I believe I was on A yard, with a few of my homies and stuff, and he was telling me that he was gonna get me pulled over to where he was at, which was D-Yard. But he only had like 3 or 4 months. He was going home, so I told him, "Hey, I'm cool, man. Leave me over here, because I'm kicking it with the homies." So anyway, this particular cousin, between '98 and now, and this is no joke, man. He's been back and forth to prison no less than 6 or 7 times, and currently he's locked up right now. He's been locked up maybe about 7 or 8 years, and he probably has another 5 or 6 years to go. And I think he's in his 60s, right? And so, for whatever reason, going back and forth to prison, it did not deter this dude, man. This dude happened to get out one day and go back the exact same day, even though that happened to be a mistake by his parole officer. He got a violation. So a lot of these times he would get out, he would get violated for not reporting, maybe having a dirty drug test, so on and so forth, or whatever. So he may have to do, 9 months, 16 months, something like that, Also, back in those days, when I first hopped into the streets, the crime laws wasn't as strict. You could catch an attempted murder and take a deal for 7 years and come home in 3.5 years. You could go to trial and lose, get a 9-year sentence, and come home in about 4.5 years. You could catch a murder, plead down to a voluntary manslaughter for 16 years, do half time, and get 8 years. Somewhere along those lines, I would like to say maybe around 2000, somewhere up in there, 2001, they came out with these real strict laws now. And so nowadays, for an attempted murder, I got a friend that's in there, I believe, for an attempted murder or terrorist threat. He's got like 95 years to life. So it's definitely it's crazy. I remember I was in Ironwood with this dude, man. He was a Crip from Compton, and he was doing a life sentence, I think 50 years to life. He had just got there, hadn't been on the yard 2 or 3 months. But now what's crazy about this dude is, earlier he had a life sentence about 1.5 years ago, maybe somewhere around there. Now this is right around the time too when California just started to push the 3 strikes, and so you could have two felonies. If you had been arrested for 2 felonies, if you happen to get arrested for a 3rd time, even if it wasn't for a violent felony or for a felony, it could be upgraded, and you would end up getting a life sentence due to the prior 2 felonies that you had. And so, excuse me, my phone is ringing. I'm hoping that it's stopped. But anyway, let me see right here. And so anyway, man, this dude, for whatever reason, he was in there for his 3rd strike. He had 25 to life sentence. He was fortunate enough to get that sentence overturned. This dude goes out maybe about 4 or 5 months, tries to rob a bank, and comes back with a life sentence. So sometimes being in prison doesn't deter people, and sometimes being in prison several times doesn't deter people for whatever reason. It reminds me of another dude now. Like I told you guys, when I was in the county jail fighting my charges and cases, I was in there for about 2 years because I had 2 separate cases, right? And so I would see people leave and then come back 5 or 6 months later, see people leave and come back. I've seen several dudes do that, man. This one dude from Hoover, I seen him leave and come back a couple of times, So he left. Maybe about 5 or 6 months later, he comes back. Now, when I was locked up, I was always fortunate enough to have my family and friends, mainly my family, send me reading material. I love to read. I just didn't start reading when I got to prison. I had an extensive library on the street of books, right? And so, I was known for having books in there, books, magazines, rap subscriptions, stuff like that, Vibe, the Source, all types of stuff, And so I'm out there at this particular time when this guy is coming in. I'm in 3A, which was the Crip Tank, and I'm a porter. So when he comes in, everybody just so happens to be locked down. So me, and I believe the porter was Dan Tanner, the other porter. So we out there cleaning up, and the porter position is really a position where you can floss you out of your cell. When people is locked up, you clean up, you can hop on the phone, hang out your cell, watch TV, depending on what sheriff is working, sometimes he might just leave you out for a long period of time, right? And so we out there chilling. So I see this dude coming down the hall. So once he gets maybe, 15 with 20 steps, I recognize who it is. This dude that's been in 2 or 3 times. So now when he coming in, he got he got a defeated look on his face, right? And I say, damn, what's up, homie? You back? He said, yeah, man. They got me on a hot one this time, man. Damn. So he goes on to the cell. So a hot one in California terminology is this dude has been charged with taking somebody's life. And so when he come in too, he say, hey man, can you please bring me one of them books? I say, yeah, don't trip. I got you, homie. So he go to his cell, maybe in about 5 minutes, I make my way down there. And like I said, he had been in there before and I was known for having a lot of books, So I said, hey man, what you want? I got this, I got that, He said, oh, no, man, I need a Bible. I need a Bible, man. Bring me a Bible. So now all of a sudden that you being charged with a very serious, murder, now all of a sudden it's time to pray. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, man, it was, it's just crazy that, and at that time too, he happened to be, this dude was probably in his, I would say probably in his mid 30s, so he wasn't a young dude, right? And so, but it's crazy how sometimes people will get out and for whatever reason, even though they may be doing time with lifers and around people who have life or people who's fighting life, it doesn't dawn on them that it could happen to them, right? I remember when I first got to the county jail, my cellie was a Crip from Westside PJs in Rubidoux. And so he was in there. I forget exactly what he was in there for. And so I believe he was younger than me. So he may have been about 18, 19 years old. And he ended up going to the California Youth Authority, which is like a prison for people between the ages of maybe, I believe, 15, 16, all the way up to 25. So, he eventually takes his time and he goes on. Like I said, I stayed in the county for about 2 years. So maybe about a year later, him and his brother, his younger brother, come back on a murder charge. Yeah, they was definitely going through it. They was definitely going through it because, of course, murder. You definitely looking at a life sentence. And so, fortunately for him and his brother, fortunately for him and his brother, they ended up taking a plea bargain, and the charges was reduced. And I believe they ended up getting somewhere around 13 years or 14, 12 years, somewhere like that, right? So it turned out that they didn't end up having to do life. But like I said, a lot of people sometimes, go back and forth, man. I was at one particular prison with a dude by the name of E-Dub. E-Dub was from, I believe E-Dub was from Riverside, if I'm not mistaken. But he definitely was he ran and functioned with the IE car, the Inland Empire, of course, which is the same car that I was functioning with. So, we definitely was good friends and stuff. So he gets out. Now, keep in mind, this dude knows that I got a life sentence or whatever. You encounter a lot of people, doing time, right? And so sometimes people will when they leave, they'll look out for you when they leave, maybe send you a package or send you some things. Everybody's not going to do that. And I didn't expect everybody to do that. Sometimes, especially people who I grew up with, when I run across somebody who's from Bannon, they may say, hey, chill, when I get out, man, I'm going to look out for you. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that, right? And to keep it real, I would say about 95% of them didn't do what they was talking about they was going to do, right? But anyway, so this dude, E-Dub, he gets out. Now, me and him never had a conversation of him looking out for me or nothing like that, right? So it definitely wasn't expected. We didn't know each other from the streets. We just happened to meet each other at that particular prison. Maybe about 5 or 6 months, man, this dude comes right back. He's in the intake cell, and he's hollering out, I recognize his voice. I go over there. I'm like, damn, what's up, homie? You back? He's like, yeah, man. Damn, man, I'm back, man. Hey, homie, you think you can shoot me a couple of soups? And, he got to requesting all these items, man. And I told him, hey, homie, listen, homie, I ain't got nothing for you, man. You just was out there on the street. You didn't send nothing up in here. So, sometimes dudes is, it's just a trip. The expectations sometimes, of dudes, like now, my cousin, he calls me periodically. He needs this. He needs that. He needs this. He needs that. Hey, cousin, can you send me this? Now, the entire 24 years that I was locked up, this dude knew I had a life sentence. This dude is my first cousin. A lot of times when he would get out of prison, he would call my mom to have my mom pick him up. He never sent me a grunion. This dude never sent me a grunion. Actually, when he was in prison, I was in prison. I had another cousin who was also in prison. I happened to be at CMC East, where it's a lot of hustling going on. You can make a lot of money up there. So I would have, I would make transactions and have a lot of money sent to the house or whatever. I even sent him enough money to get himself a package. I believe it was $200. And my other cousin, who was in jail at the time, I told my mom to send her some money to get her a package or order her a package or whatever, right? So here I am in jail, looking out for two other people that's in jail, right? And so, like I said, though, when my cousin got out, he didn't think to give me anything. Then, even when you get out in California, they give you $200 of gate money, which is of course not a whole lot of money, but he could have at least, told my mom, well, you know what, I know Chill got life, because at that time too, the chances of me coming home were slim to none. So he could have said, Chill's never not coming home, or he didn't even have to say all that. Here's $50 for him, or whatever. He didn't do none of that. So I just kind of find it kind of funny now how every time he calls, he needs something for me, but he didn't have anything for me when he was locked up. So it's definitely a trip. I remember asking. Remember asking when I got to reception center. So reception center is when you leave the county jail and the initial prison that you go to, where they're going to assess you and calculate your points and determine what type of housing you need, whether it's minimum security, medium security, or maximum security. I happened to be in a cell with a dude by the name of OT. OT was probably about my age, 25, 26 at the time, and he had got 50 years to life. He had just paroled from prison, maybe about 9, 10 months before that. And like I said, this is when California had just initiated the 3 strikes and was giving out a lot of time. And I said, well, because one day we're in the cell, we're talking. I said, damn, homie, didn't you realize that you had 2 strikes? And he was like, yeah, man, but and then he was also around other people who had just started getting 3 strikes, but he was like, damn, man, I just, I didn't think that I could get caught up and stuff like that. So it's just a trip, how people will be in the same predicament as other people and just don't feel that they can end up, in that same position, even though they're right there doing time, right? And so like I said, I've seen a lot of people, man. A lot of people go out and come back. I remember I was on a level 2 yard. I ended up going to the hole. I got sent to the level 4 yard from the 2 yard hole, and I encountered a dude who, soon as I come in, he hollered at me like, "Hey, Chill, what's up? Hey man, what's going on?" So when I get up in the cell, just so happened he's like 2 cells above me in the vent, so we can talk through the vent. And he said, "Yeah, man, you don't remember me?" And he said, "It's I forget exactly what he was going by then, but the name that I knew him by in Ironwood was Killer White, or maybe he was going by Killer White then, either or, one of the two. But we was real cool. We used to kick it. Oh yeah, okay, so yeah, he was going by, I believe he was going by Insane in Ironwood, and then up there in Corcoran, he was going by Killer White. Either way though, right? Right before he went home, he had got a package. I got a package in his name because he wasn't getting a package. In California, every 3 months we could get a package from home, shoes, clothes, food, hygiene, a whole bunch of stuff. And so he wasn't going to get one. And so I got one in his name and gave him a few items. So of course, he knew that I had life, right? And so, that was probably maybe around 2001, somewhere around there. So when I bumped back into him again, it's 2005, I believe, 2005, somewhere around there. And now this dude had just came back from court. I believe he had 90 years to life, and he had just came back from court from getting 25 or 50 years that he originally had knocked off his sentence, but he still was stuck with 90 to life. So it's crazy how, and he was younger than me. So it's crazy how, like I said, sometimes people will be walking the yard, talking, engaging, doing time, chilling, hanging out, playing basketball, exercising, whatever, with people who have life. And they just don't take advantage of seeing a person in that position and going out and changing their life. But like I said, especially when people are younger, I've never came to prison on what they call a determinate sentence. A determinate sentence is when, it's already determined when you are going home, so they call having life an indeterminate sentence. So, if you got 3 years and you're supposed to get out in a year and a half, or maybe you got 10 years and you're going to get out in 5 years, I assume that time is much easier to do. I believe the worst thing about doing time as a lifer, especially when I was doing time as a lifer in my era, because now they are paroling lifers, and so it's that you have hope when you come to prison if you're young enough. Right out the gate, you have some type of hope. But the worst thing, for me, I believe in other lifers is we didn't know if we was ever going to get out. You had lifers like myself who didn't think we was going to get out. You had other lifers like some friends of mine who, despite having a life sentence, felt very strongly that they was going to get out. But the worst thing about doing life was not knowing, if I was ever going to get out. So it's easier for a person who's going to be able to say, who can look at the calendar and say, okay, I'll be going home in 2 years, or I'll be going home in 7 or 8 years, or whatever. At least you know when you're going home. So I believe that if a person comes to jail with a determinate sentence, the time is definitely much easier to do. But still in all, that still doesn't stop a lot of people from going out and catching more time. One thing they say about lifers is the recidivism is extremely low. And of course, recidivism meaning the rate of people who return to prison, right? And they say, I believe when I left, they say the recidivism rate for lifers was maybe about 1%, somewhere around there. And I only met one lifer who got out and came back. Now, this particular lifer, he done about 32 years on a double homicide, gang member. And let me tell you, man, this dude was extremely, extremely disappointed, aggravated, frustrated at himself, everything, right? So when he came into the building, by this time I'm at CMC West, which is a 2-yard. So he happens to come into this building. The building is being used as an orientation building. So the majority of people who come to that building will eventually be moved into another building to live and be housed permanently. And so when he came in here initially, and he was older, probably in his 50s. I could just see the look of angriness and frustration on his face, right? And so, he would just be so angry and disgusted looking. Like I say, I didn't know him, so I didn't speak to the brother, right? Initially, somebody on the yard told him, hey, man, chill is cool up in there. I guess he had told some dudes out there, hey, man, there's a couple dudes in the building. I don't, these dudes is different or whatever. Somebody said that, well, chill is up in there, man. Chill is solid, holler at chill or whatever. So eventually we got to talking, and his situation was he had done about 32 years. He had been paroled, stayed out maybe about a year and a half, 2 years, and came back for being in possession of a weapon. And man, the man, it's even hard to describe right now. The extreme look of disgust was killing this dude, man. And I honestly believe it was good for me to see that dude, because I told myself, I never want to be like that. I never want to put myself in that position to be going through that type of frustration and anxiety. But of course, we never know what a day will bring, right? But there are definitely some things that we can do to try to prevent returning to prison, being in possession of weapons and stuff like that, or whatever. But like I said, we never know what situation on these streets is going to make us do, what we feel is necessary to protect ourselves or whatever. But anyway, man, that was just a little talk right there about dudes who I have seen come back to prison. And everybody's not doing life. You have some people that's doing life on the installment plan. So anyway, you already know what it is. It's your boy 16 to life. Resume normal program.